Hello, welcome to my diary. I'm Tatami. Here we talk about whatever I want to, and today we're going to talk a little bit about witches. This is a term that personally I don't actually take offense to. Like you'll see various communities reclaiming words, such as the black community with the N word, the gay community with the F and the Q words. Um, Sometimes people do reclaim language, and I do think that's important and empowering, which is why I do stand with modern millennial witches, pagans technically, who reclaim that word. We reclaim it not only for actual witches who have suffered under the so-called civilization of Eurocentric serfdom patriarchal culture, but also for the people who had nothing to do with witchcraft, for people who genuinely were just midwives, herbalists, people who loved their family members who were willing to try something new to save somebody, people who were pretty and people got jealous of them, people who were ugly and people judged them, people who generally, overwhelmingly, were women and got labeled with this word as a source of shame, as a scarlet letter. I am absolutely one of the people who stands with people who reject that scarlet letter paradigm that is associated with the word witch and instead tries to reclaim it for something else as we move on into the other generations. However, I'm also one of those people who, for better or for worse, has an ability to understand both sides of a conversation, even if I don't at all agree with the other side. So I also understand a lot of people who take great offense to the word witch and reject it at all costs and associate it with whatever devilish concepts and customs have been, associated with the Christian Abrahamic paradigm. That being said, I therefore do fight for normalization of witches in media. I don't usually like depictions of witches in media, but when I do like it, I do want to say something, which brings me to say something about a very silly and childish tale that I'll call The Witch's Ball, which is what the movie was called. I think it was based on a book. I can't quite remember. One of the things I really liked about this movie, upon just watching it with my kids, was the use of the word conversion. Pretty much from the very beginning, the plot revolves around the fact that this young girl and her normal, non magical born mother are both about to be basically initiated into their covens, into their circle. They're about to become witches officially, due after study and dedicating themselves and understanding spiritually what they're getting themselves into. And the mother, is like my age, maybe 35. Sorry, not my age. I'm 28. But my point is like she is like 30 to 40 years old and she's converting. Literally, that's the word they use in The Witch's Ball, is converting to witchcraft. I found this quite a refreshing blessing to witness in a movie about witches. Usually, witchcraft is delegated as like folklore, nonsense, tall tales, oops, I did it again type shit. Our products are sold in the game section of sites. Our products have disclaimers at the end of them. If you are native and you have a religion, if you are African and you have a Islander, Indian, you name it, you have to put a disclaimer at the end of, say, your Etsy or PayPal sales, because otherwise you are liable as a fucking liar. Whereas let's just be real, Christianity does not have to adhere to those same rules at all. They are absolutely allowed to sell holy water, prayer, and whatever else have you. And if you would ever say that that's a scam, you'd be persecuting Christians. But if you say it about our religions, you're scamming people. You need to put a disclaimer. If you say, as an indigenous person, that your ancestors are with you, as is tradition, you didn't make this up. I didn't make this up. I'm Afro-Latina. Let me assure you, neither sides of my bloodline was I the first to do any of this. And in fact, a lot of what I do predates Christianity. But what I do is interpreted as evil, as scamming, as trash, as not a religion, as not a legitimate spiritual system, but rather as folklore, as tall tales told in the backwoods of lands not yet properly tamed. And who are you to say anything to that? You can't say it to their religion because they feel very backed up. Even though you also have centuries backing you up, they also have the power. So indeed, my stuff has to be sold as a curio, as a game, as a toy. Tarot is a toy. It doesn't matter how many people worldwide treat it as a legitimate spiritual craft. You are not an Abrahamic religion. You will not be given that respect or dignity. And in fact, you don't only have Christians fighting against your dignity, but because Christians have so sullied the name of religion for people worldwide, you have atheists and anti-theists also arguing against your rights. Go figure. But interestingly, what we have with the Witch's Ball is a beautiful story. It's mostly white. We have this intriguing situation where there are a lot of people of color in the story, and I do appreciate them being in the story, even though it's not that serious of a role often. I mean, let's be real, the very beautiful, dark-skinned principal or teacher, I forget off the top of my head right now, who was leading all this, ends up falling for the foreigner cousin from insert some European country where he doesn't know the language, and the only thing he can say is, I put my hand in the toilet. And that's what the dark-skinned black woman is attracted to, is this man who can only say, I put my hand in the toilet. Like, and her last name is like Tula, and he calls her toilet like several times, and that's like part of the joke. I'm done. My point is I did appreciate the movie for actually referring to witchcraft as a religion, for showing a world in which it was very normalized for witchcraft to be a religion. I did think that it did very well with that. So while I did have a little bit of beef with how this one dark-skinned black person was portrayed in the movie, overall, I mean, that only happened with her for the last like 10 minutes she was on screen. Otherwise, she was a shining beacon of a black woman in your childhood who just inspired you as a black child utterly and completely by her own abilities. So I give her that. I give the movie that. I didn't like that she ended up with cousin Yuri. I don't remember what his name was. I just remember that all he could say was that he puts his hand in the toilet, and I was like, did not expect the black woman to fall in love with him over that. I'll say that. But other than that, I did think that the movie had really beautiful messages. I thought it was beautiful that the child made a mistake, tried to fix it, decided not to go down a path of weaponizing magic when it was not necessary. You know what I mean? She seriously considered it, but ultimately was like, okay, like this situation clearly doesn't deserve or need to involve anything especially cruel. So I really appreciated that part of the message. Basically, it's a movie that generally, as a pagan parent who is raising their kids pagan, I would share this with my kids. I would show them this movie just for fun without feeling like I need to put a billion caveats and disclaimers and asterisks on it, which other movies I do feel like I have to do that. For example, The Princess and the Frog, I'm constantly, having to explain to my kids why I think the Shadow Man is just a shoddy character and basically racist and anti-black and anti-indigenous religion. Um, but this isn't one of those movies I have to do. The Witch's Ball, I think, is one of those movies that a pagan could show their kid and really not feel like they were showing them something that was actually detrimental to respecting religions that aren't Abrahamic, which a lot of witchy, warlocky type of shows kind of do. So, at any rate, I was pleasantly surprised by the storyline. I really liked all the mentors that the young girl had. Um, Obviously, because it's a movie for like 8, I would say no younger than that, like 6. My kids are 4 and they liked it though. It's there are scenes in there that are like, what, who is this for? Because it's like they'll take a whole 10 minutes in the movie to just show her in a bunch of dresses, but y'all, it wasn't even like gowns. Like the whole point was like you were supposed to be in a gown for the witch's ball, but the little girl is in just like little girl short to above the knee dresses, where it's like little girls have gowns. I've seen floor length gowns on a 3-year-old. So why an 11-year-old doesn't have a floor length gown? Like if you're going to do a fashion show moment in your movie where the character tries on a bunch of clothes, like just make the clothes nice. That was my only thing, was I was like, these are the cheapest section of Ross type dresses. Like, I'm not going to cheer on for any of this. Like, nothing about this is impressive. And in fact, the dress that was supposedly ugly at the end was technically better than all the dresses she spent in the montage dressing up. So I was like, that part was like, that's just cheap and shoddy. I get, of course, I grew up on 2000s Disney Lizzie McGuire movie type shit. Like, I enjoy me a good, let's just dress up for about 6 minutes of the movie and oh, look at me. Now I'm at clothes. Now I'm in more. Like, I grew up with Hilary Duff. She did that in almost every movie. Cinderella Story. Like, name it. She was just trying on dresses in a random scene in the movie. And so I'm always prepped for that type of scene and willing to accept it. But I was just like, come on, dude. None of these dresses are pretty. Why are we wasting time on this scene? That's literally the only moment of the movie where I was like, why waste a moment on this if you're not going to actually just spend money on her looking good in those scenes? These dresses are ugly. Of course she wouldn't want them, especially as someone who didn't like dresses. Why would she want an ugly dress? And the ugliest dress, which she was left with, a bright orange dress, was actually better than everything else she tried on, in my honest opinion, even with the sleeves that she later ditched. And then she had a beautiful like wings to go with. Like, why wasn't the whole montage a little girl dressing up like supreme witch status? Like, you could have done that. I think they could have done that. Other than that, it is a fine movie. That's so nitpicky for me to spend like 5 minutes of this just ranting about how bad that dress up scene was and how much better it could have been, because the rest of it I was fine with. I was fine with all the mediocre acting because it led to a greater purpose and each character had a real supreme role that taught something in the movie. So overall, I would say I give The Witch's Ball a 7 out of 10, and I highly recommend it for pagan parents to show to their kids. Um, as a show that isn't technically Wiccan, but treats witchdom as a religion, which is so important. It doesn't treat it as a game, a curio, what you do when your ex dumped you and you need to get revenge. And so I guess I'm not going to go with the Prince of Peace. I'm just going to do voodoo and use someone else's ancestors and religion and basically make a mockery of it. You know what I'm saying? It treats it with like a respect and reverence, which I actually really found refreshing and appreciated, which won't age well when, they start actually giving us decent content. But here in 2020, I will take what I can get. I thought The Witch's Ball was adorable and actually respectful. Even as it was a child's movie and did a lot of that silly child's shit, play those child's game, I still felt it was very cute and respectful for what it should do for your children, the type of messages it should send to your pagan children when you're raising them and not specifically raising them Christian. All right, may your ancestors and spirit guides be with you at every crossroads, and I will see you next time.